I think that our best experience, and the nicest one in England we got, was to be able to hold the British passports and to be able to join the carefree British holiday makers abroad. And as we love watching the strange and new places, and of course as well people, so we started to go at first alone, and then we have joined sort of travel agencies for longer holidays. And last year when we were in Ibiza, we met quite a nice middle-aged couple from Midland somewhere, who for some strange reason always got lost and have forgotten things. And well, anyhow, the lady used to turn to me for advices and sort of companionship. I tried my best. I tried to help as much as I could. Well, it lasted about 3 weeks, and I thought everything was over when we were due to go home. We were sitting already on the coach to the airport. But at the airport, she approached me again with that wonderful thing that they have forgotten to collect their passports from the hotel reception. I said it was quite a serious matter because the Spanish authorities don't need to let them go without the passports. Well, I have taken her to the representative, and it took about half an hour to sort things out, and to our satisfaction they were allowed to leave the country with us. And of course they were overjoyed, and after asking how long it takes before the plane is due to leave, and being told it takes about 30 more minutes, so decided to have a celebration drink. So they went off to the bar, had a drink, we lost sight of them, and off we went without them, with 2 empty seats, because they've missed the plane, but they haven't missed their celebration drink.
I flew in the world first, but then I was a relief manager for the East Asiatic Company in Penang. We had a small hotel for about 16 persons. And between them was many old ex-service colonels and I would call the big nubs. And they decided to go back for the war, or well, they were supposed to. I say, I will go with you. That's the way I come here. And I joined the Merchant Navy. They don't really know what to do with me. So they sent me up to Newcastle. There was a training ships up there for merchant seamen's gunners. I don't know much about it. I had a course for 6 months there, and then they asked me to join as a gunner officer a ship in Malta, in the harbour there, and I go in the convoys between Alec and Jip, or you maybe ought to say Alexandria and Gibraltar, to bring supply into the heart place of Malta. And I was lucky to survive from January 40 till somebody hurt me in 44, and they flew me back to England. When I come to England, they put me in Moorfield Hospital because I lost half of my eyesight. And I also had broken legs and lots of other sorts of things, all forgotten now. And I got my eyesight back, except I have to use these dark glasses. But I see enough. I don't want to see more than what I see today. I'm quite happy with what I see today. And then I joined the Navy, and when I come out disabled, they sent me to Isle. The Royal Navy have a recreation home there called the Silver Whale Hotel in Inniscarry, County Wicklow. And that's my loveliest time, with broken legs, no eyesight. I got myself fit again. I come up to 18 stone, 12 pounds.
When I came to England for the first time in my life, I soon discovered that I was considered to be a non-British human being from Holland. When I tried to clarify that everything Dutch is not necessarily from Holland, but from the Netherlands, I learned that this includes the territory of our Flemish-speaking friends. Now I happen to be from that part of the Netherlands, which is called Noord-Holland, in other words, the northern part of Holland. Its main center is a lovely old town called Alkmaar, with a world-famous cheese market, which attracts in summer every Friday morning stacks of tourists from foreign countries, and they in turn attract stacks of people from our environment who want to do business with souvenirs and other trash, and others who are just curious to know why all these people are coming from abroad to see how the cheeses are carried away from the weighing house to the ships. When business is done, however, the tourists go off to their hotels or caravans loaded with souvenirs, and the other people stay in town to do some more business. Many of them are raising cabbages. You can eat those cabbages the way you want. Some like them hot, some like them not. When night comes, our people are still there. They enjoy their evening meal in one of the many restaurants, and after that they start drinking in the cafes until closing time at 1 o'clock in the morning. Many of them become roaring drunk, like my friend Ari, for example, about whom we said that once he entered the pig stable, thinking it was his house, laid down beside the pig, thinking it was his wife, and grumbled, "Hell, darling, are you still wearing that old pink nightgown with those 2 rows of buttons?" I soon found out that such a thing could never happen in England, even though there are pubs and inns. I thought at first that a pub was another word for inn, but I learned that an inn does not want considered to be a pub, and that a pub is a place with nobody in, during most of the day. But this applies also to a pub. For example, when you are attracted by the sign morning coffee, you hear that it has nothing to do with a kind invitation like morning coffee, but that they are closed now, since a place 100 yards away is open. So why bother? Well, I went to that place and I had my morning coffee. But I love to return to England as soon as possible.
Being an announcer was mostly routine work, but now and again we used to act in plays. My voice being light, I did not often get deep emotional parts, but one day my big chance came. I was to play the orphan teenage girl in Payron's L'Étincelle. To put myself in the mood, I dressed all in black, inside and out. At the climax of the play, I was to sacrifice my love for the sake of the woman who had adopted me. I knew the part by heart, and I was rendering it at the stand mic in the middle of the studio with my eyes shut, carried along the waves of the dramatic impact of the sacrifice I was about to make. The last words left my quivering lips. I looked across at the mic. My colleague's face was hidden by her script. Her shoulders were shaking. A quick look at the producer through the glass. In the control room, he and his colleagues were in fits. And just then, something soft fell around my ankles. From the beginning of the dramatic rendering, my pants had started to fall in slow motion, so that it seemed as if my dress was just getting longer and longer. We had to have a coffee break, but after that, for me, the Sarah Bernard flame was sadly extinguished. And another time, I was reporting on the Smithfield market. When it was finished, the clerk came and said, "The chairman would like you to have this." It was a ship's carcass. I was wearing smart light coat, carrying a recording machine, a clapboard, etc. And now this carcass hugged to my surprised bosom. No car, no taxi, so it had to be the tube in the rush hour. It stopped under Blackfriars Bridge for ages and ages, and I was standing tightly packed against a smart city man wearing a droopy carnation at his buttonhole. I looked up. All I said was, "Shall we dance?" And I've been stuck like that ever since. No one laughed. A little pool of blood was forming at my feet, and the train started again. I got off at Sloane Square, where I lived. What to do? Give it to the ticket collector? Hardly. So I struggled out, trailing blood. The butcher would be shot anyway. Home I went to my maisonette around the corner, drip, drip past the royal court, drip, drip up the stairs and flung it in the bath. The bell rang. God, I'd forgotten that an eccentric spinster friend of mine was coming. She went up to wash, yelled and had hysterics. The 4 little legs reaching up at her had been too much. Early next morning, and in dark glasses, I carried a large object wrapped in oilcloth and begged the butcher to do what he willed with it.
4 years ago, I travelled on a night boat across the channel to come to England to work as an au pair here. So I met the German au pair girl on the boat, and I talked to her, and she said, "Oh, au pair, it's not too bad, and so on. You will like it, and I'm sure your family will make a fabulous English breakfast, and bacon and egg and all this jazz and so on, and then you can go to bed and sleep." So when I arrived at 7 o'clock in the morning, having 20 hours journey behind me, my missus was very busy in telling me where to set the breakfast table for the family and where this little plate has to be and that little cup has to be, and you find this here and there. So I was already a little bit shocked about, having to start working immediately. I just got 2 toasts and a little bit of jam and some tea, and I thought, well, better than nothing. So after that I thought, oh, well, having helped her setting the breakfast table, I surely can go to bed now. Oh, no, she showed me where the bedroom was. There was a huge bed in there, it was a style, the frame of a French bed, but with 2 separate mattresses in there. So I couldn't push the bed apart, so I had to I'm not really very tall, in a quite odd and awkward way, had to tuck the sheets in and lie across the bed and struggle about, and when I came off the bed again, I had to start on the other end. It took me quite a long time. Oh, she had a few more beds, because there were 3 children in this house as well. So eventually I did all these beds, and I thought, well, I probably can go now to bed and have a good sleep. I was already tired. Oh, no, she knew, that I could cut some onions and do this and do that, and so I helped her cooking the meal. So eventually we had the meal, and then I helped her washing the dishes. I couldn't speak English at that time, and I was terribly shy to make her understood that I was really tired and I ought to go to bed. Oh, no, she had funny little jobs all the time. It was already 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So the daughter came into the kitchen, and she looked at me and she said to her mother, "I think that our new girl ought to go to bed. Look, she looks really tired." "Oh, yes, I think you're right," she said. "Yes, now you can go to bed, and I'll give you a knock in the evening so you get for supper to call you down." So next day in the morning I heard that she knocked 5 times at my door, and there was no sign from me. So she went into the room and tried to, shake me awake, and I just was like a dead person in there, so I thought it serves her right.
I've just come back from a holiday in Denmark. I tried to take a gamble, and I selected a holiday on a farm. And I didn't know this holiday, so I went there just without knowing anything. And it turned out that from Copenhagen I had to travel about 6 hours by train. Then the weather came worse and worse. And by arriving to the little township, it was pouring. And I was met by my future landlord, a chap whom I immediately called Mr. Sparafucile. That's a good English-sounding name, from Rigoletto, because he looked like a highwayman. So I thought, now this holiday is really going to be a shocker. But later on it turned out that this Sparafucile had a wonderful little villa tucked away in a small forest, pine forest. Not only a villa with all modern conveniences, but also a small swimming pool. And on that night he said they expect 2 football teams. I was not too happy because I don't like this game. I think you call it soccer. But it turned out that the daughter of this landlord, Sparafucile, was the football player, and it was her team that came and the team they played against. So I had 2 girls' football teams there. Later I found out that Denmark is the world champion in female football, and so I was glad to romp about in the swimming pool with 22 mermaids. I was rather looking like Alberich in the Rheingold, swimming with the Rhine maiden, but it turned out that was quite good fun, and next day I took part in only as a spectator in the football game between the 2 local teams. It was real good fun, and I came to love Denmark very much. After my first very poor experience, it turned out to be an extra good holiday.
My English, as you can hear, is not very good. I should say it is bad, but I have learned from the English the art of the understatement. When I arrived at the White Cliffs of Dover about a year ago, my English was non-existent, apart from a few phrases I had tried to memorize from a phrase book which belonged to my grandfather. He used it when he came to London with my grandmother on his honeymoon in 1911. I knew, for example, what to say inside the British Museum. What are those things cased in a dry covering over there? A friend, in phrase books there are always many friends ready to answer questions, was then supposed to answer. They are what are called Egyptian mummies. I also knew what to say when dancing with the girl. You look charming tonight. How well the pale blue satin becomes you. And casually, what a lot of diamonds the dowager has got on tonight. Grandfather's phrase book proved useful only once, but on that occasion it was really fantastic. There I stood at my arrival at the customs with my luggage. Anything to declare? Asked the man, whom I thought must be the Home Secretary. In vain I searched my mind for a suitable answer, worthy of such a gentleman. And suddenly out I came with it from the last page of the phrase book, headed Useful Proverbs. You are barking up the wrong tree, I proclaimed. He was stunned. He looked around because he did not believe such an answer could come from me. And then he made a mysterious mark with the chalk on my suitcase, and I took the train to London. I was happy. I had made myself understood.
The Europeans have a very different opinion about Britain, they call it England, this green, beautiful island. I was one of them until I landed here, that means in Britain, during the war. I was a member of the casino, not the casino that they're playing, roulette or chemin de fer, the Monte Casino, famous battlefield where they've been shooting proper bullets. After being wounded, I was transported with a hospital ship to Liverpool, and on a misty night, I was greeted by the Red Cross ladies, and to my astonishment and delight, the first lady that greeted me was a very important one, very famous one. It was Diana Napier, the famous film star and the wife of world-famous Richard Tauber. Of course, many are gifts and flowers landed and chocolate, which was so rare during the war, on my stretchers, and we've been transported to a little place called Ormskirk near Liverpool, where they have converted from a girls' school, they converted the girls' school into a hospital. As a lieutenant, I supposed to be in a special ward, but I insisted to be in the theatrical hall. It was one big hall mixed with privates, NCOs, etc. It was very, very jolly there. And slowly, strangers from the town, from Liverpool, from the north, I used to call them Norwegians, used to come with their smiley faces to comfort us, leaving gifts on the bed, talking to us like good old friends. At the beginning, I was very, very suspicious. How come, you know? But then I realized that on a Sunday, when the working people came, using all the pay packet wages to buy us leather gloves, cigarettes, chocolates, etc., I started to believe and learn more and more that this island is the people, mostly the people that count here, no matter who they are, Scottish, Welsh, Irish, English. They're kind people, they're Europeans, they're advanced. And today I'm very proud that I carry now a membership of this country because I'm a British subject, I've got a British passport, and I bought my ticket to a wonderful land, to wonderful people.
My main fear was about the Five Fingers Rapids, which is the most dangerous spot along the entire length of the river. So I was a bit apprehensive, but I followed the instructions and took the extreme right channel, and I shot the rapids all right. Well, I didn't shoot them, I was simply thrown over them. And the funny thing that I was still, I lost the control of the canoe right away as soon as I was in the rapids. And I took a lot of water and I tried to splash it out while I was still being tossed about in the rapids. Nevertheless, I passed that rapids all right, and after this became very relaxed, abandoned all the precautions, and wrote in my diary that anybody could do this river, and I paid the price for my carelessness next day. Most of the time I was drifting, not canoeing, and I drifted most of the time backwards. And I didn't notice that I approached a huge log jam in the middle of the river. When I spotted this, it was rather late. I frantically tried to avoid this, but failed. The last thing that I remember was that I stretched out my paddle to push out from the jam. And the next moment I was already under the water and under the log jam, with all the canoe and so on. Not only I was under the water and pressed down by the logs and trees, but also a rope from the canoe tied my right hand, and I could move my right hand. So I pulled out my knife and cut the ropes and managed to surface from the other side of the log. I saved the canoe. I still wonder how, but I lost all my food, my camera, both paddles, and what is the greatest blow is my diary for the last 3 years.
One day, the old farmers were taking their bull to the market. It was a very fine specimen indeed. They had tied a rope around its neck and were leading it down the high street happily. Then they decided to stop for a drink, and so left the bull on the pavement, tied to a lamppost. When they came out, a policeman was waiting beside the bull. "Don't you know," said the police constable, "that the pavement is for the use of pedestrians only, and only pedestrian?" Surprised, two old farmers looked around them, and one replied, "But, Inspector, our bull is not riding a bicycle." A man rushed into the bar. "Quick," he ordered, "give me a double brandy before the trouble starts." The barman, without a moment's hesitation, did as he was told. The man drained his glass and feverishly ordered another. "Quick, give me a double brandy before the trouble starts." When he had finished it, he put his glass on the bar. "Quick," he said, "give me a double brandy before the trouble starts," which he drank. He started to order another when the barman interrupted him. "Pardon me, sir, but what is the trouble?" The man said, "A big one. I haven't any money."
What do the English eat? Answer, the same as they always did. It takes centuries to make a drastic change in the British diet. A top favorite on menus is still meat, and the English still eat beef as their first choice. They are eating a bit more poultry and a little less lamb. They eat a lot of vegetables, meat and two veg, just as it's always been. In addition, they still put away a very large quantity of cereals, especially in the form of bread, cakes, biscuits, and breakfast foods. They drink a lot of milk and eat plenty of other dairy products like cheese and cream. Judging purely by quantity, they are a nation of egg eaters, almost an egg per head per day. They like plenty of fruit, but fish forms only a very small part of their diet. As for drinks, still twice as much tea as coffee, a sixth of a liter of beer per head per day, and there is a noticeable increase in wine drinking. How much do the English pay for their food? Well, prices are rising every year, but incomes are rising as well. There is one significant change, and that is in the form in which they are tending to buy their food. They are going much more for convenience foods, that is frozen, or canned, or otherwise packaged in easy handling and easy preparation.
I long for the old carp, which is the name we Afrikaners have given to Cape Town, lying there at the foot of Table Mountain with the silver and pine trees growing on its slopes. To me, it is truly the most beautiful city, forever bathed in that strong yellow sunlight. If you climb to the top of Signal Hill and look down over the city, you can watch the comings and goings of its people while sitting in almost complete silence, with only the gekoer of doves or Christmas beesies around you. Then there is the bay, so blue and calm, and stretching along the hill towards Greenpoint, Sea Point, and Clifton Beach on the other side. One becomes aware of the exotic, spicy aromas rising up from the Malay Quarter directly below, and when the sun goes down over the sea near Bloubergstrand, one can clearly hear the songs of prayer coming from the mosques in praise of the gods for granting the people of that city yet another fine day.
Well, I've just been to the Edinburgh Festival, and I saw, among other things, Don Giovanni with Peter Ustinov. Peter Ustinov directed, that is. And then I saw also a very rather controversial production of Benjamin Britten's latest opera called Death in Venice, which was about death in Venice. However, much as I am very fond of modern music, I did happen to think that this was a little bit much. Then I saw Blood Wedding, which was a very interesting excursion into the drama of Spain, set to music by a Hungarian composer named Szokoli, or something like that. And he didn't sing. He played. He kind of set the Blood Wedding by Lorca. And it was a beautiful, marvelous modern work full of imagination, better than Death in Venice. And then I saw a Bluebeard's Castle, which happened to be next to a Miraculous Mandarin. And the Miraculous Mandarin is a wonderful ballet by Bartók, and it was absolutely divinely danced. As it happens, one of the three dancers that danced in it, one of the three thugs that set upon people and murdered people, I can't remember his name, which is probably just as well, but this gentleman was subsequently arrested for shoplifting, but he left the country, so I think he took his part too seriously. And talking about taking part seriously, somebody wanted me to mention that I write plays, and I do write plays, and I've written a play called Lady Jane Grey, which takes place in pre-Elizabethan times, since it's the Duke Northumberland, the plot to put Lady Jane on the throne instead of Mary Tudor. And I had this play done at the Mercer Arts Center with American actors. I would have loved to have had English actors, but such is not the case. We didn't get them. And so one of the actors who played the Earl of Arundel, he wanted to call him Arundel in the first place, and I said, no, that's not right, it's Arundel. But I couldn't tell him about the rest of his speech, which seemed to be pure Bronx. And it was wonderful. He didn't call some of Jane Sweetie or something like that, because, I mean, it was the most painful to listen to him. He was a dear, sweet soul, full of earnest desire to be in the theater, but somehow or other he belonged in Clifford Odets, not Stevenson.
There was a farmer who bought a watch. And he kept the watch for about 2 years, and the watch finally stopped on him. He couldn't figure out what was wrong. He opened up the back of the watch, and there was a dead bug inside. He says, no wonder it stopped. The engineer's dead. Then there was the one about the war. The sergeant was talking to his men, and he passed out all the weapons, didn't have enough guns to go around. So he told the last man, I'll just give you a stick. And the guy says, well, what am I going to do with a stick? The guy says, well, you can just holler bang, bang. Nobody will have no difference. You'll probably get killed anyway. The guy says, okay, I'll go along with that. So the battle starts, and he says, wait a minute. What happens if I get in close hand-to-hand combat? He says, I'll give you this straw and put it into the broomstick, and you can just go stab, stab. Okay, I can go along with that. Well, the battle starts, and people are getting shot all over the place, and this guy's going bang, 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 bang. People falling down all over the place. Well, the guy's really feeling good. He's getting to be a hero. We're down to 2 men on the field. This one guy and the enemy. And the guy comes over there to him, calling bang, 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 bang. And the guy keeps coming. Bang, 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 bang. And the guy keeps coming on over there. He finally gets there close enough to him, he goes, stab, 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 stab. Nothing happens. The guy just walks right on his face, just walks right on over him. As he's laying there, he's feeling bad because one minute he's a hero, next minute he's dead. And as he's laying there, he hears the guy going, tank, 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 tank.
I think that English children lack a real motivational force in their learning. I'm a French teacher, and at home, if I asked, I was teaching a French lesson, a child didn't want to learn French, you'd say, but I'll never go to France, I won't ever need it. And I get the same answer, the same response here, I'll never go to France. I can't really imagine why anybody would say it. To me it seems such an incredible sort of sentence. In other things, other subjects, they're still not interested in learning. There's no real urge to do it. I think perhaps it's probably sort of a result of the society they live in. In Australia, it's a fairly egalitarian society, and your qualification is your passport to success, where here it's sort of either family or money, or both, and you go to the school depending on your money or family. And the school means that you go to university, etc., and it's sort of your success line is already mapped out before you begin, and so why the heck, when you're starting at the bottom, why can try and struggle to the top? Whereas at home, everybody starts on a par. I mean, there are obvious, extremes to it, but generally speaking, you've got as much chance as the next fella. I find that the teaching staff room varies a lot between Australia and England. The teachers in Australia are more unified. They have one idea, and it's generally carried out as a unified whole idea. The few people that sort of dissent from that generally bend and go along with the idea. But in England, I find that most of in the schools I've been in, the teachers tend to have lots of varying ideas. Perhaps I think they're being sort of liberal or sort of freedom lovers, but they tend to fight against each other in their ideas and beliefs, and don't present to the students a unified idea so that the child knows exactly where he's going at any one time. He seems to sort of have conflicting ideas and therefore sort of confusing opinions as to which way to go.
The differences between Canadian accents from Halifax, Nova Scotia to Vancouver, British Columbia are nowhere near as great as the regional accents that one hears in Great Britain, even though there are fewer people spread a tremendous distance of nearly 4,000 miles. I think when you look at voices and the sounds they make, you have to really think in many ways in terms of North America as opposed just to Canada, because although the boundary between the United States and Canada runs east to west, the fact is that the BC people relate to Californians in more ways than one. The prairie farmer relates to his counterpart in the Midwestern United States in more ways than one. The East Coast fisherman relates to his counterpart in the New England states, around in the Boston area particularly, in more ways than one. And I think because of these relationships that have built up back and forth across the border, because their interests are essentially the same, that their accents are essentially the same, up on a north-south basis rather than an east-west basis. But speaking exclusively of Canada, there are funny little things come out. For example, in Nova Scotia, a true Nova Scotian, in saying the word after, will always insert an R. It will always come out after the fact. And you can always spot a true Nova Scotian because he drops that extra R in. On the prairies, the pace of the speech will be slower. There are many accents. They are not severe, no matter how you look at it, unless there's one point I should make, and it's an obvious one, I suppose, and that is when you get into French Canada, when you get the French Canadians speaking English, naturally, a great many of them have a pronounced French accent. And I'm certain that many English-speaking Canadians have a pronounced English accent when they speak French. But putting those aside, which are sort of special things, and looking at the English language alone, yes, there are many accents. Yes, in some instances you can tell where people come from. But in the main, there is a sort of general flow of speech habits that embraces the whole country.
I've been in London for 2 months now. The fact that it is a big commercial city as well as a cultural center fascinates me. I wish I can stay longer here so that I can visit all the places which I like to go, such as the museums, castles, zoos, parks, and theaters. But there's the old saying that home is the best place in the world. It is true. I begin to miss my relatives and friends in Hong Kong. My mother wrote me recently and said I would miss this year's autumn festival. Yes. The thing which I won't like to miss in Hong Kong is all the Chinese festivals. These festivals are based on customs and beliefs up to 2,000 years old. The biggest festival of all, just like many countries, is the New Year festival. This season used to be celebrated over 15 days. Before the New Year Day, everyone is so busy to prepare for it. Housewives would clean the house and buy new clothes for their children. They also would prepare special food for the festival. The men would go to buy flowering tree branch or plant, because it is considered good omen for each house to have flowers and plants during this period. Children are especially happy on this occasion. On New Year Day, they are given lucky money in red envelopes. They have plenty of food to eat and follow their parents to visit all the relatives. People also exchange presents. From New Year Day onward, for 15 days, when people meet in the street or at home, they would wish each other prosperity with the words Kong Hei Fat Choi. Although in many ways Hong Kong is a westernized place, she still keeps all the old Chinese customs. And I think these traditions would go on year after year.
I'm from Guyana. Used to be British Guyana. Some of us used to call it, even when we were a colony, British Guyana. But when we got independence, we changed the actual spelling from G-U-I-A-N-A to G-U-Y-A-N-A. And originally, quite a lot of us at home used to say Guyana, but that was officially stopped by the ministry. As far as accents are concerned, it's always been a little puzzling to me. I've never been able to know what my accent was. In fact, as far as I'm concerned, I speak straight, plain, flat. Actually, Guyana just does have, as far as the West Indies is concerned, the least attractive. I think that's consensus of opinion of the accents, because it's not a sing-song as a Trinidadian, for instance. He has a way of going up and down now. Oh Lord, what happened there, man? I never see a man go like that, and it's very attractive. The Bajan now sounds like a combination of the Cockney and an Irishman, I think. Oi, I'm cutting off the end of his words like that, you see. But, as I say, even in Guyana, it's a little complicated, because the accent varies according to which part of the country you're from, very slightly. And in fact, colloquial language, Guyanese language, would be unintelligible, I think, to the average Englishman. Let me give you an example. I don't want to drink that, being said by someone living in the country in the, sugar belt. You say, me no want drink that. No want drink that. Me no want drink that, if you translate it literally. And, girl, where you going? Gal, where you go? Gal, where you a go? Which I find is far more attractive than the proper way that Guyanese should speak. There is a movement now trying to make it official. It's very difficult, and not be ashamed of our colloquial way of saying, because some of it is quite, it makes a lot more sense. It's easy to say some things for us in a shorter time in our colloquial language than it is to say it in English. I don't think it's really possible. It's not something that can be written, because, as I say, it varies. Somebody from Buxton would say it a little different from a man 3 miles away at Plaisance, even if you're speaking colloquially. But people tell me I have definitely a Guyanese accent.
In our restaurant, we serve basically curry, but tandooris, as people are getting used to it, they're eating more and more. But basically, they eat curry and rice, lamb, chicken, prawn. Prawn is a very popular dish. And then tandoori is basically to start with. Tandoori is pieces of chicken or lamb or any kind of meat which is marinated in the yogurt sauce, and then it's cooked in a charcoal clay oven. And the bread is even cooked in that. And you see, it's the smell of the charcoal which gets to the meat, and that's what gives it the tandoori taste. This dish was first introduced, made popular, I should say, by Moti Mahal of New Delhi. They are the people who made this dish popular.
at the big restaurants or the more popular restaurants, they have started on the menu to explain the dishes, and which is making much easier for the customers. You see, otherwise you could be spending at least about 15 minutes with one party explaining to them the whole menu. So to make it easier, they have written underneath the dish, they have explained it, what the spices and all are. And you see, because the whole thing is such a vast amount of dishes there that you can't put them all on the menu. Well, anyway, the waiter is there to help you and let you know what the thing is. Majority of the restaurants here, they have got the hotness, the strength of the curries to the level here, you see, to the local thing. It's not Indian hot, it's London hot, as you would say. It's been toned down. You won't be selling much curry, you see.
If you're not conversant with big cities, your first arrival in London can be very stunning. The first sight that greets your eye is that of huge buildings, all with square corners sitting stubbornly on the ground and thereby obstructing your view. Then there is the ceaseless flow of traffic and the continuous humming noise in the atmosphere. I am told that that noise arises out of the total combination of noises made by people, moving vehicles, and industrial machinery at work. If you are the kind of person who is very sensitive to environmental changes, you might soon begin to feel as if you were a small, insignificant dot in a wild, bustling sea of impersonal commuters and buildings. Nonetheless, as time goes by, this feeling is bound to disappear. You begin to know your way around and about, and you discover that quite a number of Londoners are willing to help you find your directions when you are lost in the streets. A problem may arise if you get lost during summer. On the average, in the more attractive streets, 3 out of every 5 people you stop to ask directions will be strangers, most probably lost like yourself. This, however, should not discourage anybody from exploring London sites, because there are police staff at about every street corner. The police staff are very civil, especially in giving you directions. Sooner or later, you get to know that it is faster to travel by the underground in London than to travel by road. Traffic jams become very dense, especially during peak hours. Traveling by the underground can be very exciting if you keep your eyes open. The train emerges from a dark tunnel and pulls to a stop at the platform. People get on while others are light. On all directions at the platform and in the train itself, your eyes are continuously being assaulted by advertisements in huge letters, telling you where to buy your clothes, where to invest your money, where to eat, etc., etc. I even saw one advertisement which promised to arrange dates for you if you telephoned a particular number. The people you travel with seem as impersonal as the advertisement. In actual fact, most of them have their eyes glued at their newspapers and books as the train threads its way through the tunnel, all the while jogging to and fro. Those who are not preoccupied with reading are busily sucking smoke from their cigarettes, even in compartments where a no smoking sign shows glaringly at the window.
Flying from New Zealand or going by boat anywhere else, it's such a long way and it's so expensive. From here to, say, Europe is very cheap to travel. But when I decided to come over here, I sort of had to make the plans to save all the money and then sort of get over here. And I knew that I couldn't just pop backwards and forwards for holiday like you could here in Europe, like so many people do. But I didn't feel isolated there at all. But I'd heard so much about all the different places I just wanted to see for myself. It's quite a sort of big decision to make, to come all this way across the world, but you know, I really wanted to do it. My friends were all here and they're telling me how different it was, and I think once you're young you sort of have to travel so you know what you're missing out on, if you think you're missing out on anything at all. But as a place to live, I'd always want to go home and settle down in New Zealand. I wouldn't want to even, you know, settle in any other country I've visited since I've left, because I just like New Zealand too much. You know, the way of life is so easy there, and it's so different from here, really. But I don't think it's isolated. You know, most of the things They do. They always follow the British trend and everything, and you hear all about fashions and all this sort of thing. But it's not really isolated. It's a long way from other countries, which I think makes it seem very isolated. But then you can just get on the plane and in a couple of hours you're in Australia or something like that. But then from Europe it's a very long way away. So once you're here you sort of want to, you know, grab all the chances you can get to go and see what you can of Europe, because it's sort of like a once-in-a-lifetime trip. You don't know if you'll come all this way again. That's the way I think about it.
You know, when you are coming to London for the first time, they will tell you that English people don't talk to people. They keep quiet, and if you don't go saying good morning, sir, or good morning, brother, or anything like that, because they will think you are mad or you are not busy. You haven't anything to do. That's why you go greeting people. Africans are lazy and shuffle about. So I had that in my mind, you see, when I was coming. So when I come to a room or bus or tube, I just sit down. If it is paper everybody's reading, I start reading my paper or anything anybody's doing. But I was surprised, you know, one day I was coming to work. I came in on the ground floor. I work on the third floor. I was on the ground floor waiting for the lift. Sometimes it takes some time to come. And there was another girl, a tall, slim girl. In fact, she's very beautiful, I will tell you that. And after some time, I noticed she was trying to kind of suppress a laugh. And finally, anyway, the lift came. And we went to the lift. And she started laughing. And I said, well? And she said, well, what? I said, why are you laughing? She said, we were kind of staring each other out, you know, not saying hello. So I said, but that is how you English people do. You don't greet people. I mean, I'm not supposed to greet you and so on. She said, yes, but, well, it isn't right. So you see, that made me to think, you know, all these things they say about people, they are not always true, you know. And another example happened when I went to Sandwich in Kent. I went to stay with one man who taught me when I was in secondary school. He was my teacher then, and we were very friendly. I spent the weekend, and it's the best weekend I have spent in England since I came. We really had a happy time. And, you know, we went into the farm and all kinds of things, allotments. He showed me potatoes, he showed me strawberries, he showed me onions as they grow, you know, fresh, the real thing. And each group of English people we passed, you can't believe it. Oh, hello, yeah, hello, and so on. Good morning, how are you? I said, is this the English people where they say they don't greet anybody at all? I mean, this is very, very unlike what I was told before. Well, since then, I don't think I have started greeting everybody I see, but I am now on the lookout. If I see anybody who looks like is a human being, I say, oh, hello, and usually I get a hello back.
Well, what actually happened was friends of mine had been overseas before, and they came back and they told me, oh, skiing is so fantastic, you know, you're really going to enjoy it. It's a great social scene. And well, I wasn't really interested in going overseas, but eventually I suddenly decided to go. And when I went over, I had two things in mind. One, I had to go on a skiing tour, and I also had to go to the Munich Beer Festival. And, well, the first thing I actually did was go on a skiing tour as soon as I arrived in London. And, well, I've never seen snow in my life before. It was actually quite funny. Most of us on the bus, we took a bus to Austria. Most of us on the bus were South Africans. We'd never seen snow in our lives before. And as we got closer and closer to Austria, we sort of went through Germany, and we found little patches of snow on the ground, you know. Oh, everyone would rush to the side of the bus, say, look, snow, snow, you know. There was about half an inch of snow there. And, of course, we got closer and closer to Austria, and we got sort of more and more blasé and more sick of the bus trip. And eventually, when we got to our skiing resort, you know, snow was pouring down, and we were sick of snow. I mean, just couldn't stand it anymore. Anyway, the first day, there was a lot of confusion and stuff. They gave us some cold soup, and then they sent us out on the slopes. And what they do is they give everyone a lesson, and then they give you a little test afterwards, And on the basis of that test, they decide whether you can be a good skier or not such a good skier. And the first thing they teach you is they teach you to snowplow. And it's sort of like a basic maneuver in skiing. What you have to do is you're skiing downhill, and then the teacher, he shouts, snowplow, snowplow. And in theory, what you do is you stick your skis out sideways, and this is supposed to bring you to a stop. But I mean, what normally happens, of course, is you fall on your backside or something like that. Anyway, they tell you to do this, and if you manage to do it successfully, then they grade you. And then they start on, teaching you various skiing maneuvers. With snowplow, you learn that's basic, and then if you're doing a snowplow and you lean on the one ski a bit more than on the other, you find yourself going into a turn, and that's your basic snowplow turn. And then after that, you get onto parallel turns and all sorts of stuff like that.